Right. Here comes Andy. So do you have that agenda you can pull up, Shannon?
I sure do. Let me
Go ahead and do that.
put that up.
I need to keep a lead in both places.
All right, can y'all see it?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So we have a couple things to work through this morning just to get your approvals on. The first is the process for the work groups. They are pretty interested in how this moves forward past what they're doing now. So Bob and I came up with this general process and would like to get your input and your approval on it. So basically the idea is the work groups, their job is to review the recommended actions from the white paper and either accept, refine, or not accept each action item. And then through discussion and debate, add additional action items to their list of recommendations for their area. And once they've finalized a list of recommendations, this is where we need to figure out what our process is. They forward them to the implementation committee. So we have recommendations from the traffic group to review today. And at some point they need to be reviewed by city staff. I don't think they need to be changed, but I do think we need to have city staff input at some point. That could come at the same time that the implementation committee is reviewing them. And then after that, do they go to the planning commission? Do they just go to city council? Do some of them go to planning commission and then on to city council? What's the path you want to see for these? So we need to determine that step. And then do we want to discuss any further? So after city council adopts some of these action items, they become code or policy, but do you want to discuss how that happens? Do they get implemented into the comprehensive plan? Are they a separate plan? So those are our first things to talk about today. So comments on that process or thoughts?
Let's do this. So this, these first couple are just a guide just to make sure that particularly as we get the economic and business development group up and running and the university partnership group that is getting up and running. And then also just to go back to traffic and transportation has done this already. And to give a little more guidance again to housing and neighborhood, non-student housing, neighborhood planning, and our land use group as we continue to move forward. So I think, the first three steps in this are pretty clear in what we have been, discussing as far as that goes. The fourth step, again, I think this is going to be, it depends on what we're doing, because some things that we're talking about don't need, planning commission wouldn't be involved, but obviously with some things in, some things in, some things in land use and development definitely will need to go to planning commission, and we just need to determine that as things come forward. So Fran, hand up.
Yeah, so one other issue, and Shannon knows this, we've discussed it too, is the level of generality versus specificity of the recommendations from the committees. So when you see ours later on, they're fairly general, right? They're not action items. They're more maybe policies, or I don't even know what you call them, but you'll see them when Shannon brings them up. But they're not as specific as, for instance, locate transportation nodes in some parts of the city, or Bob, you were saying they're going to reduce speed limits to 15 miles an hour. Right. So they're more about, increased safety in neighborhoods kind of level. So I think for all of the subcommittees, we need to sort of give everybody understanding of what is the level. And if it's the more general level, then what becomes the process for the specific strategies for those levels, right? It's almost like on the comp plan, they have maybe they call them goals and then strategies. I'm not sure the terminology they use. So when you see the ones that we put together, you'll see that how general they are. And then I think our question is that what we want all the committees to do at that level or be more specific? I think what we did, and Shannon led us through this, is the right level at this point, because you don't want to waste your time making lots of specifics until you're sure that the general makes sense. But just what would happen at that point.
Yeah, I think Fran, the way is to kind of go with a McGuireism. I think the right level of detail is that we ensure that what the committee, the subcommittee, or the working group is putting forward communicates what their kind of thought process and intentions are. So
Okay.
it can't be too little detail where something important isn't communicated.
Right.
But we don't need to you're right, we don't need to over detail. So it's the as much as necessary, as little as possible.
Okay.
McGuire.
Well, when you see what we post, you'll sort of see,
Yeah.
I think we did that because Shannon brought a good point. At some level, some of that is more, or has to be involved with the staff also
Right.
in terms of what they can do and their capabilities. So maybe when we look at those, we can get a sense of what, if you think it matches what you expect, Bob.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and I looked at them and I think it looked good in its current form.
Okay, so maybe when the implementation committee reviews these, the implementation committee decides which go to planning commission and which go to just directly to city council?
Yes, I think the implementation committee decides that, and the implementation committee can then ask questions back to the work group if they, need some level of clarity or detail to make sure that they are putting forward to, and staff, and then that what goes forward to planning commission and city council, the message doesn't get lost. Is everybody okay with that? So implementation committee decides the path, planning commission, city council, and then we forward those on.
This is maybe, this is David, sorry. It may be helpful if we kind of created a somewhat of an organizational chart and a flow chart for action. Because I was a little bit unclear whether I'm even supposed to be in this 8 o'clock meeting. As opposed
Actually,
to
you're not, but thank you for the input. That's good input. And I think we can absolutely do that.
okay.
That would be helpful.
Then I can log off if you wish. So that's fine.
Yeah.
And join back at 8:30. Okay.
Hey, Shannon, did you just see, I think an email popped up from Ken that he is needing the link again.
Okay.
If you could shoot that to him.
Because
Yeah.
I got an email.
Go back to bed, David. Yeah, sorry.
I got an email from Lowell saying 8 o'clock. So
We need to get those. I realized that when I saw that this morning, that everybody is still on that same invite. So we'll get that straightened out this
Okay.
week, so we get we separate out the invites.
All right. Well, then I guess I'll leave you guys to it then until 8:30. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay.
So,
Thanks.
Elaine.
I was just gonna say, I think if anything involves a comp plan update,
Yeah.
or if there are any new or revised ordinances that need to go forward, those things need to go through the planning
Oh,
commission.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think,
That's how we can distinguish.
yeah. And so that's the good thing about the committee. We've got Andy sitting here, and we've got you and Larry and Jackie sitting here as well to say, yeah, the planning commission needs this, so that's how we'll determine the path
Okay.
as we go forward. And you and Larry and Jackie can outvote the rest of us on whether or not it should go to the planning commission.
And don't forget Brad.
And Brad, oh yeah, Brad. Is Brad though on implementation, or is Brad just on land use? I couldn't remember.
It's hard for me to tell because everybody's been at everything and I don't know
Yeah.
what separates them out for this meeting.
So let me send you guys, I have updated a list
Yeah.
that I think captures who is where. Let me send the link to all of y'all today, and you can look at that and make sure it's correct.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that Brad's on multiple committees, which I think are definitely transportation, and then and has been sitting in on land use with us as well, but
Brad is on the implementation
Is he?
committee, the overall committee.
Okay.
Yes,
okay,
because he and I were selected initially,
that's right.
the
That's
planning commission.
okay. It's all coming back to me now. And then we added Elaine and Jackie to the implementation committee.
The token females, right?
Absolutely not.
Elaine,
We were correcting your mistake of not having you two appointed over Larry and Brad. That's what we were doing. Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
well, I will check in with Brad later today and get him updated and fix whatever we need to fix.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
So we, so yes, we do. We have a majority quorum there. So planning commission will be able to decide what you want and what you don't want to deal with by a simple vote there. So yeah. So is everybody okay with this first part? Do I hear any more comments or any objections to what these first 4 steps is? And Shannon and I work on a little flow chart of how things are going to move through working groups, implementation committee into the correct path of planning commission, city council, staff, so on and so forth.
I agree.
All right. Any
good.
opposition? All right, so we will start there. So next item. Shannon?
The next item is the work groups as they were put together. I think the residents that joined those work groups viewed those as a short-term commitment. And this is going to need some sort of long-term accountability group. So Bob and I talked about this committee to creating a standing ClemsonNext accountability committee with 2 community representatives that would represent each work group. It would have a community representative as a chair and also have folks from staff, planning commission, and city council on there. And this would be a longer term commitment, a 2 to 3 year commitment of meeting at least quarterly to check in on any progress made on these action items. So thoughts on moving forward towards establishing that?
Yeah, the idea here is that longer term, we have largely a group of residents and citizens that are the what the heck's going on, why isn't this happening group, or great job, we're moving forward and things are going as they should group. To make sure, this is the make sure it doesn't end up on the shelf committee might be a good way to put this. As we get through, and this, I would see this after we get through this first round here of going forward, that we create this again as the let's not let it sit on a shelf. Dr. McGuire.
I think this is great. I think it's something we have not done. My only question is why at the last paragraph or last sentence do we specify the city comprehensive plan? Will there be, isn't there a likelihood that some of the things we recommend will not be in the comprehensive plan and we want them to monitor those things also?
Right. I think when I wrote this, we were talking about some of these things being implemented into the comprehensive plan, and now I'm understanding that some of them won't, so that will be changed. It will just be to check in on the progress made on these items.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we have failed to do this in the past in terms of sort of a watchdog, make sure we're ticking the boxes. This is a great addition to this process, I think.
Yeah. And part of the thinking, and maybe we say, you know, on our strategic growth plan and comprehensive plan, as we continue to think about, and I know Andy's got the I think is the RFQ or RFP out the door on the comp plan, white paper plan integration and comp plan understandability.
We've already executed the contract and we are working on getting it all cleaned up right now.
Okay, awesome. So that's going down the road. So there will be some, you know, I think this committee can make make sure that we're, again, because some of these things are going to end in the comp plan, so they're going to have an eye on, that as well. But either way, so at least say the strategic plan for growth / white paper, we'll clean that up. Is everybody okay with us thinking about this as we move forward?
This is Elaine. Could I get a little bit more clarification about what you meant by comp plan white paper integration?
That as the where the things in the white paper line up and are already in the comp plan,
Okay.
we want to make sure, that and all those things will be vetted with the planning commission, obviously.
Okay. So it's not somebody else putting things in the
No.
comp plan yet. Okay.
No, it's not, but like seeing where the recommendations line up, because almost everything in white paper is somewhere in the comp plan. It's just that you've got to be one of the people that knows the 600 pages of the comp plan to figure out where it is. And then the other big thing that this group is going to work on and show us are some ways that we can bring the comp plan down to that, Greenville type. You can see, you have different levels of the comp plan where you can see, a few page overview that gets at the big things. Then you have a little more detailed but manageable, 30 to 60 page version of the comp plan. And then you have the 600 page version, kitchen sink version that's cleaned up and edited as it's needed to be in the background there. And that all three of those things align. And so it will give us a couple different ways that people can engage with the comp plan and get some level of understanding with the comp plan.
Okay, thank you. Because it was not clear to the planning commission that what these consultants were going to do, other than what we've been asking for since the end of 2019, which was just clean up, just edit, get the misspelled out there, get the numbering right, mostly editorial. So it's nice to know this, and we need to pass that on to the full planning commission about what this process involves.
Yeah, that's what, Andy, am I misrepresenting that? Did something change between the last time we talked about it? And
No, same thing. We're going to clean it up, and then we're going to have like a supplemental document made.
yeah,
That's more digestible.
yeah. Like I said, I'd like us to have like an 11 by 17 pullout, maybe both sides of an infographic that explains the comp plan, to, so that something that people would actually look at, as well as the other things. But that's what that's talking about there.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we've just got a couple minutes left. Everybody okay with this? Are any objections to this item? All right. Y'all, so Shannon has shown, a little bit of a flow chart of where the work groups are. We can add the general flow chart of, and this somewhat works, but the general flow chart of how things are going to move through.
We'll create a separate one. This was just to give you an idea of where all the committees were right now.
Yeah.
So, and I'll send this out each week.
All right. And then we can move into the traffic, transportation, transit work groups recommendations. So Shannon and Fran, if you want to run us through this real quick.
Sure. Fran, do you want to do this?
No, you could do it, Shannon. That'd be great.
Okay. So the traffic and transportation group took the ClemsonNext recommendations. They edited them a little bit, and then they also added some that came out of their work group. So under Invest in Transit, the white paper's recommendation were for Clemson University and neighboring jurisdictions to expand contributions to the CAT system. And the committee thinks we should also look at expanding the CAT bus system itself. Added frequency of buses, expanded routes, and coordinating all the systems. So basically taking that recommendation and adding a little bit more depth to it. The second one is to fund and find funding partners to conduct that regional traffic study along 123. The third one is takes the recommendation and adds to it. Ensure that new transit lines and transit service link to areas where additional density is planned, including student housing. And that development should be encouraged where transportation alternatives are already available. So this is one that we're going to have to figure out how they work with the land use group to implement. And the fourth one is basically the same from the white paper: encourage the university to establish policies to restrict commuter parking on campus and reduce the number of freshmen with cars. So those were the four that were really transit related. Does anybody have any issues or questions or concerns with those?
I don't know if we need to do this, but I think 3 gets at that. 3 and a little bit of the others get at some of the things about transit nodes that we've talked about a little bit in land use and development. The other thing that in the fourth one, I think maybe I like the word reduce instead of restrict, just because I think restrict has more of a negative connotation than reduce. Commuter parking on campus. And I would like to, so I'd like to change that word, and then after reduce commuter parking on campus to incentivize or increase use of transit.
Okay.
If that's okay with everybody. So it'd be encourage Clemson University to establish policies reducing commuter parking on campus to incentivize use of transit and reducing the number of freshmen with cars. I think that just puts that in a little more positive light.
Andy?
I was just going to update y'all that 10 o'clock today, I have a meeting with Anderson County, Oconee County, Pickens County, Clemson University about that regional transportation study. And I called up the Council of Governments, and their transportation planners are going to facilitate the meeting. And the reason I brought them in was because I wanted people to view this as a regional study and not them helping Clemson out with their study. And they're going to pull us all together. So I have high hopes. I'll let you know what happens.
Okay. Thanks for that update. All right. Do we want to keep moving here?
Moving?
Yeah.
Okay. So this next one, expand bike and pedestrian infrastructure, is where the group added, I think, 4 items. And they changed the wording of some of these, which might be important to you. So the ClemsonNext white paper said we should prioritize funding the Green Crescent Trail and the downtown corridor plan. And the group changed this to say prioritize funding initiatives that improve the walking and biking connections between the city and campus, especially along Highway 93 and 133 to the Old Calhoun neighborhood. And they changed this because they didn't want to get caught up with what is part of this plan or what is that part of that plan. They really wanted the city to prioritize anything that would improve these certain areas of the city, whether it was part of a plan or a new idea. So that's something to consider. In student catalyst areas, establish requirements for developers to put infrastructure in place alongside development. That stayed the same. These are new. Continue to add and upgrade bike and pedestrian pathways in neighborhoods, on connector roads, and in main thoroughfares. And they're thinking Issaquena, they're thinking Berkeley, they're thinking neighborhoods. Provide access to public transportation through the provision of bus shelters, transportation nodes, and neighborhood connectivity. This is where they put the idea of those transit nodes. Thinking more bus shelters and connecting neighborhoods more and making those transit nodes available in places that are accessible to citizens, as well as any student developments. 5 is new as well. Create standard citywide wayfinding signage, clearly indicating the location of bike and walking paths, access to bus stops, routes to parks, and transportation hubs like our parking garage, and integrate that with commonly used digital wayfinding applications. So that whatever we do physically in real life where we have signs, that we also integrate that with some of the most used digital applications. So when people are visiting, or for students that are more likely to use those, it's easy for them to find that. 6 is foster a culture of alternative transportation focused on biking and walking. I believe that came right from the comp plan. And 7 is very broad. Integrate land use decisions with transportation priorities. So again, that might be some sort of process or working with the land use and development group. So thoughts on these recommendations?
I like the specificity of a few of the first ones, and I like the generality of the last two as
Okay.
well included there.
So for these, what do y'all think? Do these need to go to Planning Commission? Do they go to City Council? Do we need to talk about this next week?
Yeah, I think we can talk about that next week, where we want these to go, because, you know, most of these are already somewhere in the comp plan, but we probably do need to make sure that they get codified, and we need to think about what policies might need to be put in place to ensure that these things happen as we go forward. That probably, my initial thought is maybe they go to the land use group as well first for that integration of decisions about transportation priorities, to have that group look at them
Okay.
as part of the decision process. Anyone else have any thoughts there?
This is Elaine. I have a question about I'm looking at the document that I'm not sure who sent it to me, but it's got the one page on the front and it's attached to the original ClemsonNext recommendations. And there's several places in those that it talks about funding the downtown corridor plan. Are we pulling that off the table now? Because it's not in what you just presented in this one page thing.
Right. So I think the group that number 1 under expand bike infrastructure is thinking, when we got into discussions about the downtown corridor plan, it seemed that there were some roadblocks there because it is such a big plan. And so what they wanted to emphasize is they wanted the city to prioritize any sort of walking and biking. And they're thinking, I guess we can expand that connection, that 133 to Old Calhoun. I guess when we discussed it, we also discussed that coming into downtown, and that's not reflected in that recommendation, but we can take that, we can add that to there.
Okay.
They were looking at what are the main areas where the city and the campus kind of meet.
And I think, Elaine, that part of the thinking at least was, rather than attach it to a specific plan, which might take years for the plan to be approved, if ever, the sense was whatever plan gets this done under whatever cover is necessary is the best way to go. So rather than wait for the downtown plan or the Green Crescent Trail, although those probably are where it comes from, in case something holds those up, we don't want this to be held up because of that.
Okay.
All right, guys, I think we've got our folks from the land use group joining us. So we're going to pause for a second this meeting. We'll end our steering committee meeting, and I'll send you out a recap, and we'll work on what we need to discuss for next week. That's good with everyone.